Hi, guys. Welcome back to my podcast, Grabbing Coffee with Arun. My name is Arun Gala, and this podcast is where I talk to inspiring people. I'm sorry. This podcast is where I talk to everyday people that are doing inspiring things. For some reason, I'm a little nervous, but anyway, my guest today is Ron Graham. Ron is the president of VIPSET and Haven. And just to start off with, Ron, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Arun. I
Yes,
appreciate it.
yeah. So just to start off with, Ron, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Um, most people today, when they meet me, they think, okay, this is Ron Graham. He's a blind man. And one thing about it, I wasn't always blind. I didn't know anyone who was blind in my life till after I had a car wreck when I was 31 and woke up 2 months later. I'd been in a medically induced coma for 2 months, and I
Wow.
woke up um, in in the hospital in ICU, and I met a volunteer who was at the hospital who was totally blind all her life. That was the first person I met in my life who was blind,
Hmm.
and so you know, I uh, don't always remember that I'm blind. I have visual memory from 31 years of sight. So, you know, I, it's two halves of my life because last year I celebrated my 31st rebirth day because the
Right.
day I had the wreck was October 9th. And when that day comes each year, I celebrate that because my life, I was given a do over in life. I got a second chance. And that's Uh, this is very different than the Ron Graham in the first half of my life. It's just I've done things that I never dreamed of when I was sighted. I never knew I could do. I didn't know I had the confidence to do. Because if you had come to me when I was in that hospital bed, waking up after that coma, and said, "Hey, dude, you're blind. Guess what
Hmm.
you're going to do in the next 31, 32 years?" I would have shook my head and said, "No way." I would have, well, I know at that time I still wanted to crawl under the covers and never come out. I was scared.
Right. Right.
Uh,
Yeah. I like new challenges too, Ron. I like
yeah.
to figure out things. And so, what happened after that? Then, did you go to Chris Cole right after that, or?
Well, I was trying to figure out what to do because, I was in the hospital another month and a half, and then I
Hmm.
went to not blind rehab, but physical rehab for another 5 weeks, just building up the strength in my legs, in particular, because when you lay around in a hospital bed for 3.5 months,
Oh
your
yeah.
muscles atrophy, they shrink up.
Right.
But in my previous life, I'd been a captain with the state prison system, and all the tough things that I faced there, and pretty scary situations. Nothing scared me like being blind did. And um, it was I put it in timeline. October 9th of 93, I had the car wreck.
Hmm.
Okay. And it was middle of January, late January, before I got out of the hospital and went to physical rehab. Then I went there for 5 weeks, so it was late February. And then I moved back home with my mom and dad. Now that's humbling. You've been out on your own since you were 18, and now I'm back home under their roof, under
Right.
their
The
rules,
rules, yeah.
and I all I could I was still going through this adjustment to blindness, because I was mad, I was angry, I was going through all those steps of grief,
How
all
did your
those
parents
stages.
how did your parents react to your blindness? Or
Um, Couple of different ways. My mom became the rock of our family. Before, my
mm,
dad had been that, but my this really brought him down,
hmm.
um, emotionally. It tore down an emotional wall.
Right.
He, you know, the sim- he was very thankful I was alive. He would have done anything to give me his eyes,
Right.
but um,
I think
you know,
that's the
they were
same way
there.
my dad reacted too with my RP. So.
Yeah, you know, that's what a dad does, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. You know, they were there. They were my solid support. I never doubted that, which is exactly what I needed. I needed that safe place to land, and they gave me the time and space to figure out what do you want to do with your life. And I was still dreaming about I'm gonna see again. I'm gonna get, you know, my eyes haven't woken up yet.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but
Accepting it
one,
is not easy. So.
no, and you know, the I mentioned those stages of grief. When I finally got to the point of acceptance, well, I mean, that took a while because I was ping ponging back and forth between depression and denial. Doing this bargaining. Me and God, we're doing some talking. I was talking really bad to him for a while,
Right.
but it's just you work through this. Everybody, I didn't know how individualized this was. I figured, well, this is just a standard format. Everyone does the same thing over the same period of time. And I come to find out, I actually worked through it pretty quickly because um, I'd had uh, one neuro ophthalmologist in Austin tell me that, you're just not going to see again. Your optic nerve doesn't regenerate because I hit my head after I flipped a car going 110 miles an hour drunk
Hmm.
and severed the optic nerves. And so there's no connection between the eyes and the brain. And he says there's two nerves in the body that don't regenerate, and that's the spinal cord and the optic nerve.
Right.
So I came down to Houston in May to see just a regular ophthalmologist. He didn't have the fancy equipment the guy in Austin did, but he told me what I needed to hear. He told me, get your moxie about you, learn to live your life as a blind man.
Hmm.
And I had talked to the regional director for, at that time, it was Texas Commission for the Blind.
Right.
And I didn't want to go to Chris Cole. I said, don't talk to me about this Chris Cole place. There's
Hmm.
just nothing there but a bunch of blind people who know they're blind. They've probably been blind all their life. I don't need to go there. I need to learn to live my life right here at my parents' house.
Hmm.
Boy, that was still in denial or whatever you want to call it. I just wasn't seeing things for what they were. But after I came down to Houston and saw Dr. Willis, he made me think, okay, what do you need to do? Because I was wanting my sight back, and I felt like if I give in and concede and say, well, I want to go to Chris Cole,
Hmm.
then I'm giving up hope of ever seeing again. But I realized, look, you got to live today.
Right.
Um, life is going on outside. It's not coming to you knocking on your door saying, come on, Ron, I want to take you with me. No, you got to
Right.
get out there and chase life. You got to pursue life. And when I was on my way home with my dad from seeing Dr. Willis here in Houston, I talked to him about, your next day's off. Can we go up to Austin? Let me go take a tour of Chris Cole.
Hmm.
And that was my first baby step forward as far as acceptance.
Yeah.
And I said, well, huh? Go ahead.
No, Ron, the thing of it is because I'm thinking about what you're saying because yours was sudden. You lost your eyesight completely.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
mine was like
Unexpected.
I have RP and even I still have some useful vision, but it's
Hmm.
gradual. I don't know which is more difficult. Is it to lose it completely or is because there are still times I'll look at the phone and act like I can see, but I can't. So,
Hey, I still look at the phone like I can see too.
or
I mean, I'll hold it up in front of my face to push buttons and to touch the touch screen on my iPhone and like I'm looking at it. Old habits die hard, but something. I, Before I became blind, I always thought, well, you're either blind or you're sighted, and
Right.
I didn't know about anything low vision or visually impaired or legally blind. I didn't think about any of those
Well, a
gray
lot of people
areas that,
don't know those terms either. They think you're either completely
yeah,
blind or you're just,
or you're sighted.
or you're
Yeah,
sighted. Yeah.
yeah, and
So,
that's how I was. And but I've come to learn that I'm in the minority in what's called the blindness community because there's a smaller percentage of us who are totally blind than those that have some light perception, some gradual loss of sight, so they still have some sight. And the that adjustment that you're at, you're saying, the adjustment. Um, I think, just what I've learned over the years, meeting with people and in my studies, that I've felt that you, anyone who loses their vision gradually, you go through the adjustment process, the stages of grief.
hmm
Every time you hit a plateau,
right.
and you get comfortable there, and then guess what? Boom! Here comes fate, just kicks you again. Oh, I'm taking a little more of it, so you have to adjust all over again. And
hmm
to me, I think that's tougher. I mean, I only had to adjust one time. I only had to deal with it one time, and there
Right.
was, like I say, some ping ponging back and forth. Um, but it's you know, once you get to the point of saying, okay, I want to deal with this. And I think that's the big attitude shift. I want to deal with this. I want to do something. I don't want to sit here and be the pitiful, individual sitting here, the poor little blind guy sitting at home. So,
Right. So tell me more about your experience at Chris Cole.
um, when I took the tour, the biggest thing I remember was at the end, the lady asked me, "What do you want from Chris Cole?" I said, "I want my life back."
Right.
And I was only there from right after the 4th of July till the end of August. I was there during college prep,
Right.
and it was very empowering
This was like
because,
1 year after you were in the car accident, right?
at, yeah, less than a year later,
Right.
yeah. And to me, I thought, well, this is just normal. This is what everyone does. Within a year, you're in blind rehab, and you're.
hmm
I've come to find out that's not nearly ever the case. A lot of times, it's just that denial and not wanting to do something. But I was ready to do something, and Chris Cole. You know, I often tell people they don't show you how to do everything, but they
Right.
give you the basics, they give you the fundamentals that you can build on.
Yeah,
And
because
more than
you
that,
have to have that drive within you to do something. Right.
yeah, I mean, that's what's going to get you there. And I
Right.
mean, they're not going to spoon feed you confidence. And that right there. If I got one thing out of there, it was confidence. And in most areas, I
Right.
have to say most areas, because as big and bad as Ron Graham was, I mean, I'm 6'2", I weighed about 230.
I
When I
didn't
was
realize
at
you're
the,
that tall. I didn't realize you were 6'2". You're a little bit taller than I
yeah,
am, a couple of inches.
yeah.
So after Chris Cole, then what happened?
Well, when I was there at Chris Cole, I, I had my first dealings with O&M and M and a white cane,
Right. Right.
and that kicked my butt. That,
Mm.
like I say, I got confidence in most areas. That white cane, I didn't want to use white cane.
Oh yeah, we
I,
all have that. We don't want to use
I,
it. So
I mean, no matter what they showed me, how good it could help me, I felt like I'm waving a flag saying, "Hey, look at me, I'm blind," and I didn't want to advertise that.
right.
And that took a little while for me to get to. But
Oh,
what
it
one
took us
thing I
all a
did,
little while. Yeah.
one one thing I did find there was some people had guide dogs, and I was like, "Why do you have a dog and not a cane?" And I looked at other people. I said, "Why do you have a cane and not a dog?" And I left there knowing I wanted to get a dog, and I applied to the Seeing Eye, and um, it was January of '95, So, just over a year after I was out of the hospital, I was in Morristown, New Jersey, training with my first seeing eye dog.
Mm-hmm.
And that, again, that added to my confidence. I was a lot more confident traveling with my seeing eye dog than I was with my cane.
Right.
And I felt like with him at my side, we could go forth and take on the world. And we did. Um, on to college. I finished up my associates in criminal justice. I began speaking at schools at my high school where I graduated, went to a youth conference in San Antonio, a youth leadership conference at the state level, and I met um, the woman who is now my wife of 26 years.
Wow.
And, you know,
Congratulations.
thank you. She was there as a sponsor from Channelview, and I didn't know much about Channelview, but she lived here in Kingwood with, her family all lived up here, so she had her apartment here, and we started dating long distance. But then I moved down here to be closer to her. Um, Went to the University of Houston Clear Lake and earned my bachelor's and my master's degree in psychology, and that was, you know, feeding me on the inside because as I learned more about myself, I learned I like to help people. I'm a good listener,
Mm-hmm.
and this was a field I could get into.
So
Um,
did you work anywhere around
I
or?
I did not. Well, one of the things during grad school, I
Mm-hmm.
worked in the disability service office at my university,
Uh-huh.
and my first job after I graduated was as a coordinator for disability services at a junior college.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not get my LPC. Just I, I was protesting um, because you have to do 1,500 hours internship, supervised internship, and nobody wants to pay you. Um, that's that was a big hang up, and I figured out that's
That's a lot of
that there
hours,
was
isn't it?
18 months. If you work full
Wow.
time, it was 18 months full time,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, that's just giving away your labor and not getting paid for it, and I just couldn't see the sense in that. So I chose not to do that. But the education, the knowledge, the skills I learned, I've used every day since. It's made me a better husband, better father, better teacher. I've done a lot of consulting in different areas, worked with a couple of different school districts as a trainer for the visually impaired, teaching
Uh-huh.
technology. And there's times I had to take my trainer's hat off and put on my counselor's hat because some of these kids were working through some of their own issues. And okay, it's not about training today; it's about listening. Let's see where they need the help here.
So how did you get started with these two groups that we were talking about earlier, Ripset and
Oh
Haven?
yeah, well, VIPSED is the Visually Impaired People of Southeast Texas, and after I'd worked at the college
Mm-hmm.
as a disabilities coordinator, I missed my wife and our son, who was 4 at the time, and they were living back up here in Kingwood because we had the family support. So I came home and I wanted to do something, just volunteering to do something working with people who are blind. And one of my former O&M instructors was working in the New Caney School District, Kelly Costello, and Kelly said, "Ron, man, I got something for you. Come on up here." And I started working up there. And well, when I started meeting with people around here, I realized I had 3 people, 4 people near me who were all blind and didn't know anyone else who was blind in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, why don't we start a group and we'll start a support group and see where that goes. And that's how VIPSET got started. I said, if the group doesn't take off, at least you'll meet some my other friends, and I won't be the only one you know in the area who's blind.
Right.
And then after we got started, I got called a phone call from Lee Bonsher.
Yeah.
You know, did you know
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. She
Well,
moved to
well,
Israel or something, right? Or she moved somewhere.
yes, yeah, she's over in Israel.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. I
sir.
know Lee. Yeah.
Yeah, she called me, and that's how Haven got started. Was she said, "Well, I run a support group down on the southwest side. We meet at the Marcy Keys Center, and um, we Uh, what wouldn't it be great if we could get our groups together with other groups in the area and do something once a year to bring all of our groups together?" I thought, wow, what a great idea. So we met with Michael McCulloch, who had the
Houston
Houston Low Vision
Low
Club
Vision Club. Yeah.
Central,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
and Minnie Crystal, who had her group via the
Mhm.
visually impaired advocates.
Right.
And we started sitting down, mapping out what can we do. And Lee said, "Hey, I know Dr. Wu at U of H
Yes.
at
I know Dr. Wu too. So
yes, Dr. Wu, that was a good man right there." He said, "I'll take y'all on." And you actually worked with us in the early days, helping Michael out, coming in with
right.
him.
Right.
Um, so it was that's how we got started, and we started with 4 support groups. We added, the NFB and the HCB. Um, and we grew, and today we're 11 groups and organizations.
Wow. Man, that's a lot.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's just we became a nonprofit because we figured out, we had funds, we were making a little money. We don't get rich, but we have a little money, and things work better if you're a nonprofit organization. We're a 501(c)(3), and that's just worked out really well all the way around. And um, we didn't have any officers for Haven. We were just a collective. Everyone had an equal vote, but to become a nonprofit, you had to have some structure with a president, a secretary, and a treasurer.
Hmm.
So I became the president, and I've grown into the role and tried to take the stewardship of Haven very personally and very responsibly. It's my baby. Um,
Believe it or not, Ron, I heard that Haven is very unique, and because I heard other cities don't have something like this. You
there's
know.
nothing like this. I've looked, and I think uh, you know I I actually put in for a grant this past year trying to get some funding to go meet with other leaders in some of the other larger metropolitan areas, because I think it's a powerful thing that can happen in any large metropolitan area where you've got, if you've got the ACB and NFB with a local chapter, and you've got other support groups, you can bring them together, and you can do a lot more than any one of those groups can do individually.
But Ron, what I'm getting from you is I say this to a lot of people too. You really have to be an advocate for yourself, right? I mean,
Yeah, when I went to Chris Cole, they had a mandatory 2-week self-advocacy class.
mhm.
And when I went there, I didn't think about me as much as I saw the young people who were blind, because this was college prep. And being their own advocate was something really foreign, really new to them. But for me, with my background, I'd learned to speak up and be my own advocate because I had to when I worked at the prison system. But I've never let go of that. I think it's one of the most important skills we, especially as blind people, can have. Um, it's the aspect of advocacy is near and dear to my heart. I'll speak up and champion the rights and our cause and the things we need in a heartbeat.
Because believe it or not, we have to educate people because once they know that you're legally blind, they think that you can't do anything. You know what I
Yes,
mean? They
and
ask you like, well, who dresses you and who feeds you? And I've been asked some crazy questions like, well, no, I do it myself. You know, I mean, I own a house. I wash my own clothes. They're just in awe. Like, oh, you actually have a college degree. Well, how did you get that? You know, like I stole it or something like that. You know, so
yeah.
anyway, so Ron, just to kind of wrap it up, really appreciate having you. But what would you tell someone that's kind of newly blind or somebody that's looking for a job? That I have several friends that are looking for a job, but they can't seem to find one. So what?
Well, the job front's scary for any of us. I mean, when I found that job, when I finally got that job at college, I I was 2 years graduated with my master's degree,
Hmm.
and I mean, I was applying shotgun approach. If I was closely qualified for a job, I was applying, and it was only 2 years later before I finally got my job after earning a master's degree. You think, well, you got a master's degree, any job, you're going to find a job pretty quickly. They don't happen easily. Be patient is one thing, but if you're newly blind, one of the first things I want to tell people has three parts. One, you're not alone. There's others out here, and find us, because we're here. We these different groups that make up Haven. Most of us have a support group aspect. Get connected. Who else knows what you need besides someone else who shares your same needs? Your resources, your information. They're the people who are going to know. You want to know uh, how they do the laundry, how they wash their dishes, you know, how they know when they're cleanly shaven. All these questions that someone new to vision loss is going to ask. These people are doing it every day already. They know. So know you're not alone. And go back to Lee Boncher. Her support group, their motto was, there is life after vision loss. If
Right.
I can't emphasize, if I can only emphasize one thing, that's it. There is life after vision loss. Go out, pursue life.
Believe it or not, Ron,
And
this is a good time to be blind actually because there's so many things out there. Computers that
yeah,
talk, iPhones. I mean, iBug is doing a pretty good job with training people on how to use iPhone, and there's so many
absolutely.
tools out there for us to kind of get out there and use and learn. And anyway, Ron, it was good having you. Um,
Well,
you're
well,
truly an
thank you,
inspiration.
Arun.
Yeah, you're truly an inspiration. Uh, Thanks for everything you're doing, and really appreciate having you. And
All right.
if you guys want to reach me, my email is grabbing coffee with Arun um, at gmail.com. Thanks again, Ron. You have a good
All right.
day.
Thanks a lot.
All
All
right.
right.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.